NDP leader Jagmeet Singh calls the incident at Rideau Hall last week domestic terrorism. An armed man is accused of ramming the gates with his truck. He was eventually taken into custody and charged with threatening to cause death or bodily harm to the Prime Minister. Singh says if the intruder had been a person of color, the outcome would have been different. Singh compared the way that incident was handled to that of Ijaz Chowdhury, the 62-year-old Ontario man who was shot and killed by police during a mental health call.
Someone showed up to potentially kill the Prime Minister of Canada or with weapons at his residence, and that person was arrested without any violence, and you had a person in his own home was killed. That to me is what systemic racism in policing is all about, that difference.
46-year-old Corey Huron, a member of the Canadian Armed Forces, was arrested without incident on July 2nd after police spent several hours talking to him. He's facing 22 criminal charges, including firearms offenses and making that threat against the Prime Minister. Racial profiling, when authorities suspect a person because of the way they look or the color of their skin, should not be happening anymore, but we know it does, including in Canada. Critics say too often Black and Indigenous people are targeted. Now, for the first time, Montreal is adopting a new policy on police street checks. Mike Armstrong explains what it is and whether it's enough.
The goal of the new policy, according to Montreal's police chief, is to take discrimination off the table. Going forward, his officers will only be able to stop people based on what they see happening rather than who that person is. Chief Sylvain Caron says he recognizes systemic racism and how it has led to disparities in police checks. Well, those disparities are considerable. A report by independent researchers last fall found Black people and Indigenous people in Montreal were 4 to 5 times more likely to be stopped by police than white people. The new policy doesn't really change the interaction. What it does is say explicitly things like ethnicity, gender, or sexual preference can't be the reason people are being checked. The policy also mandates officers log each interaction, including why the person was stopped and their ethnic background.
So the citizen, when he wants to complain, there's a basis now on the way that the police officer has to work.
There are Canadian jurisdictions that have gone further. Nova Scotia just last fall banned street checks. That came after a report in Halifax found Black people were 6 times more likely than white people to be stopped. In Toronto, new rules were brought in 2016 and carding almost completely disappeared. Street checks in Toronto dropped from hundreds of thousands each year to just 1 in 2018. Well, critics say Montreal dragged its feet and should have gone further. In fact, some question whether Montreal officers will fill out forms on their street checks.
At the end of the day, are they actually going to do it?
There's also concern that the policy doesn't have teeth.
What the public should know is when they are intercepted and it is discriminatory, what are the sanctions in place and how are they going to be protected?
The chief does say the policy isn't set in stone. There will be an independent review in 2021. And if there's still a problem, promises the policy will change. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
A new report from the Auditor General raises questions about how the Canada Border Services Agency handles foreign nationals. The report done this spring found the CBSA lost track of 34,700 people who were supposed to leave the country. It says the agency has failed to promptly remove most of the people ordered to leave. The Auditor General found the CBSA had not touched thousands of files for years, including some high-priority removals. The report also flagged several other issues, including poor data collection, case management flaws, and problems sharing information with immigration officials.